Hey friends, there comes a time in a man's life when the silence of being unseen speaks louder than any goodbye, not because she left, but because she stayed and never truly looked at you. She never noticed the quiet sacrifices, the way you softened your edges to keep peace, the silent ache you swallowed every time she dismissed your heart like background noise. And this kind of ache, the ache of emotional invisibility, is not a wound that bleeds, it's one that vanishes you from yourself. To love someone who does not see you is like whispering poetry into a canyon that never echoes back. And you tell yourself, maybe if I try harder, maybe if I'm more patient, maybe one day she'll turn and see the man who never stopped standing there. But the brutal beauty of life is this: love that is not reciprocated is not love. It's erosion, and the longer you hold on, the more parts of yourself you lose to the hope of being chosen. But here's the truth: you were always enough. You just offered your soul to someone who was never willing to hold it gently. And that is not your shame. That is your awakening. Today is not about bitterness or blame. It's about something much nobler: detachment with dignity. Because walking away doesn't mean you stop loving her. It means you started loving yourself with more loyalty. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." And that includes a love that demands your silence, your shrinking, your slow disappearance. Let me say this with compassion. She may have touched a part of you that no one else reached, but that touch was not enough to justify your fading. You are not a man born to beg for recognition. You are not built to wait endlessly for affection that limps toward you only when it's convenient. You are not here to prove your worth to someone who refuses to look up. You are here to remember who you are. To emotionally disconnect from a woman who doesn't see you is not an act of cruelty. It is the highest form of emotional maturity. It is choosing to heal without applause, to grieve without resentment, and to rise without vengeance. It is remembering that love is not about presence, it's about presence with reverence. And if she cannot offer you that, you owe it to your future to walk away, not in anger, but in quiet power. Because true detachment is not apathy, it is sacred space. It is you drawing a line where your soul refuses to be dimmed any further. It is you saying, I still love, but I love wisely now. And in this wisdom, you will find not only release, but rebirth. So today, we begin a different kind of journey, not one of trying to win her over, but one of recovering your own reflection. We will uncover 6 secret insights that will help you emotionally disengage with grace, without losing your humanity or your hope. If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own relationship, this is for you. Let's go start. Number 1, recognize the ache of being unseen and honor it as a sign to return to yourself. There is a specific kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from being with someone who cannot or will not see you. You speak and your words fall like feathers to the floor. You show up again and again, only to be met with a distracted glance, a half-heated smile, or worse, polite indifference. This ache, the ache of being emotionally invisible, is not dramatic, but it is devastating. And it is in this quiet devastation that a man begins to forget himself. But here's the first truth. This pain is not weakness. It is a sacred signal. It's your soul's way of saying, you've gone too long unseen. It's time to come home to yourself. The Stoics believe that discomfort is not the enemy. It is the compass. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So, when you feel the ache of being unnoticed, chosen, emotionally unfeeling, don't numb it. Don't bury it beneath distractions, overcompensation, or desperate efforts to win her attention. Instead, observe it, sit with it, let it burn clean through your illusions, because in that ache lies the beginning of awakening. You are not meant to live your life on someone else's emotional waiting list. Most men who stay in one-sided dynamics carry a quiet shame. Maybe I'm not enough. But what they fail to realize is that the problem isn't their worth, it's the audience. When a woman doesn't see you, it doesn't mean you're invisible. It means you've misdirected your light towards someone who can't receive it. That doesn't make her evil, but it makes your devotion misplaced, and misplaced devotion, when not corrected, becomes self-abandonment. That's not love, that's martyrdom, and love was never meant to cost you your soul. So how do you honor this moment? By pausing, by reflecting, by quietly whispering to yourself, this pain I feel is the proof that I still care, but I must redirect that care inward now. It means recognizing that staying in emotional purgatory, where you give, wait, hope, and receive nothing real in return, is a form of self-neglect. You don't need to explode or explain. You don't need to justify your detachment to anyone. Your quiet withdrawal can be your greatest rebellion and your softest healing. There's something deeply noble about the man who no longer begs to be noticed, who chooses stillness over reaction, dignity over desperation, the man who understands that attention is not affection and presence without depth is not love. When you recognize that your emotional hunger is not being fed, you don't need to rage. You need to return. Return to your standards. Return to your silence. Return to your strength. Because the moment you realize you're not truly seen is the moment you're called to see yourself more clearly than ever before. This isn't about turning cold. This is about turning inward. This is about learning to say, I still feel for her, but I feel for myself more. And that's not selfishness. That's evolution. You will never attract what you truly deserve by clinging to someone who treats your presence as optional. Let this be the first step, not toward bitterness, but toward becoming the kind of man who would rather be alone in truth than accompanied in emotional exile. You are not a placeholder. You are not a footnote in someone else's story. You are the author of your return. Number 2. Stop justifying her emotional neglect. Accept her truth as it is. There comes a moment in every man's life when he must stop interpreting mixed signals as secret messages, when he must stop spinning silence into poetry and detachment into mystery. If a woman constantly keeps you guessing, withdraws affection without reason, or only shows up when it's convenient, that's not depth, that's distance. And too many men exhaust themselves trying to decode the behavior of a woman who's simply not emotionally invested. The harsh truth is, sometimes it's not that complicated. She isn't showing up for you because she doesn't feel you the way you feel her. And it takes courage to let that truth break your illusions. We live in a culture that romanticizes chasing, that glorifies men who prove their worth by enduring emotional starvation in the hopes that one day she'll finally see. But the Stoics taught otherwise. They believed that clarity is more powerful than hope when hope is blind. Epictetus once said, "If someone does not value you, it is not your fault. It is your signal to go where you are valued." When you begin to emotionally detach from a woman who doesn't see you, you must also detach from the fantasy that your effort will somehow earn her depth. Love is not a transaction. Real affection cannot be begged, bartered, or built through over-performance. Justifying her emotional neglect might feel like loyalty, but really, it's denial in disguise. You tell yourself, she's just busy, she's been hurt before, or she's afraid of closeness. While those things may be true, they don't change one essential fact. She is not choosing you with consistency, care, or clarity. And if a woman doesn't choose you in her free time, she isn't really choosing you at all. You're not her priority, you're her placeholder, and no amount of explaining her behavior will make you feel seen where she refuses to look. A man grows deeply when he stops romanticizing potential and starts accepting reality. When he sees that love is not proven by how much you suffer silently for someone, but by how bravely you walk away when your soul is being starved. Emotional detachment begins not when you stop loving her, but when you stop abandoning yourself in the name of love. It begins when you finally say, "She may have her reasons, but I have my needs, and those needs are not optional. They're sacred. You deserve a connection that feels warm, not one you have to constantly chase. You deserve a woman who reflects your effort with enthusiasm, not excuses. And most of all, you deserve to stop explaining why you're worthy of love to someone who treats your heart like background noise." Emotional clarity is a form of masculine strength. It says, "I'm not angry. I'm just done offering intimacy where intimacy is not reciprocated." When you begin to detach emotionally, it may feel like loss, but what you're really losing is confusion. You're trading your fantasy for freedom. You're no longer gripping the narrative that one day she'll change, one day she'll feel, one day she'll match you. Instead, you're choosing presence, you're choosing truth, and that truth might sting, but it also liberates. Let her go, not with bitterness, but with quiet gratitude. She has taught you what indifference looks like. Now you are free to recognize what real connection should feel like. And it begins when you stop justifying emotional absence and start honoring your emotional truth. Number 3, reclaim the energy you gave away. Trying to matter to her. There's a particular kind of heartbreak that doesn't announce itself with tears or chaos. It creeps in quietly, disguised as exhaustion. You wake up one day and realize that you've spent weeks, months, maybe even years trying to prove that you matter to someone who barely looked up to notice. You've spent hours rewording texts to sound more interesting, crafting moments to be more memorable, being available even when it drained you, all in the name of staying relevant in her world. And in doing so, you abandon the most sacred world you'll ever have, your own. One of the hardest truths for a man to accept is that emotional effort does not always lead to emotional reciprocity. You can give someone the most loyal version of yourself, and they can still meet it with indifference, not because you aren't worthy, but because they simply aren't capable or willing to receive it. And that's not a reflection of your value. It's a mirror showing where your energy has been misplaced. You don't need to work overtime to matter in someone's life. You need to stop placing your peace in hands that tremble when asked to hold it. The Stoics taught that our energy is sacred and that what we give our attention to, we give our power to. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts revolve around someone who constantly makes you feel small, unsure, or invisible, you begin to color your entire life with those shadows. Slowly, your confidence erodes, your joy fades. You don't even realize it, but you stop showing up fully for your own dreams, your friends, your inner peace, all because you've made someone else's inconsistent presence the center of your emotional orbit. But here's the quiet power of detachment. It's not about hating her. It's about lovingly returning to yourself. It's about gathering the pieces of your soul you scattered, trying to win her affection, and placing them gently back where they belong. It's about asking the simple but radical question: what would happen if I gave all this energy, the effort, the emotion, the care, to myself instead? When you reclaim that energy, the shift is subtle but life-altering. You stop checking your phone hoping for her name. You stop replaying the last conversation wondering what you could have said differently. You stop mistaking crumbs for connection. Instead, you begin rebuilding. You spend time alone, not because you're empty, but because you're learning how to fill yourself again. You invest in things that bring you alive: your craft, your health, your solitude. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to impress her, but because you've remembered your own gravity. And here's the paradox. Often, the moment you stop chasing is the moment you become most powerful. Not because she finally notices you, but because you finally notice yourself. You begin to radiate something that no woman, no external validation, no fleeting attention could ever provide. Inner wholeness. That wholeness is what makes you attractive, not just romantically, but spiritually. It's the energy of a man who no longer begs to be seen, because he sees himself with clarity, depth, and devotion. So, reclaim what you gave away. Pull your light out of places that kept it dim. You are not meant to beg for space in anyone's heart. The right woman won't make you fight to matter. She will meet you in your fullness, not your fragments. Until then, be whole for yourself. That's how you truly begin to disconnect, not out of anger, but out of sacred self-respect. Number 4, let the silence heal what her words could never explain. There comes a time in every man's emotional journey when he realizes that silence is not just absence, it is medicine. When you've spent weeks, months, or even years trying to decode a woman who never truly saw you, you end up lost in a maze of half-truths, mixed signals, and emotional dead ends. You ask questions she never answers, you wait for clarity she never gives, and you keep holding on to conversations that only deepen your confusion. But the deepest kind of healing doesn't come from her voice. It comes from your choice to stop needing it. You see, silence is not just the absence of her replies, it is the presence of your own rebirth. Most men fear silence because it echoes with all the feelings they've suppressed. But the Stoics understood it differently. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Silence is where the soul speaks clearly, without the noise of need, expectation, or desperation. And when you sit in that stillness long enough, something sacred begins to happen. You begin to hear yourself again. The truth is, when someone doesn't value you, their words eventually become weapons, even when they don't mean them to be. Her compliments confuse you. Her "I miss you" texts feel hollow. Her occasional affection gives you just enough hope to keep you stuck, but not enough to set you free. And this emotional limbo, this state of constantly waiting for her to finally choose you, becomes your silent suffering. That's why silence isn't punishment. It's a declaration. I will no longer participate in my own erosion. When you stop reaching out, when you stop sending that last message, when you stop refreshing your inbox or re-watching her stories, you don't become weak, you become wise. You start saving your energy. You stop bleeding emotionally into a space that was never safe. You allow your nervous system to exhale, and for the first time in what feels like forever, your peace isn't hanging on her next reply. But here's what makes this even more powerful. Silence doesn't just help you forget her, it helps you remember yourself. You start to recall who you were before you started shrinking to fit into her inconsistent love. You remember the man who once laughed without checking who was watching, who dreamed without asking for permission, who felt whole without needing to be chosen. That man still lives inside you, and silence is the road back to him. Detaching from a woman who doesn't value you isn't about ghosting her. It's about re-anchoring yourself. It's choosing to build a space in your life where your value isn't constantly questioned, where you don't need to prove your worth through loyalty that was never reciprocated, where you don't keep auditioning for a role in someone else's life story when you were always meant to be the author of your own. In that silence, you'll feel the ache of absence, but also the slow return of power. You'll miss her, yes. You'll wonder if she ever cared. But over time, those questions will fade, because the silence will answer what her words never could. She didn't see you because she didn't know how to. But now, finally, you see yourself, and that sight is the beginning of everything. So let the silence fall like rain. Let it wash away what her presence blurred. Let it grow roots in the parts of you that were neglected. And most importantly, let it remind you, the most important conversations are the ones you have with yourself. The woman who deserves you won't confuse you. Until she arrives, stay silent, stay grounded, stay whole. Number 5, stop explaining your worth to someone who chooses confusion over clarity. There is something soul-crushing about constantly having to explain your value to someone who refuses to truly see you. It's like standing in front of a mirror that only reflects your shadows, never your light. When a woman keeps you uncertain, not because she doesn't understand, but because she chooses not to, you find yourself trapped in a cycle of proving, performing, and pleading, all while she remains emotionally unavailable. This is not love. This is emotional warfare disguised as mystery, and if you don't exit this game, it will slowly dismantle your sense of self. A woman who sees your potential but does nothing to nurture it is not your partner. She's your distraction. You'll write her long messages trying to make her understand. You'll change your boundaries hoping she'll feel safer. You'll suppress your needs to appear stronger. But here's the truth. Love doesn't need a PowerPoint presentation. If someone values you, they won't require explanations written in suffering. The Stoics warned us about this kind of self-abandonment. Epictetus once said, "Know, first, who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." If she cannot recognize your essence, no performance will awaken her clarity. She either sees it or she doesn't. And when she doesn't, not because she's blind, but because she chooses not to look, your explanations become just background noise in a story where you were never truly a character, only a placeholder. You are not a riddle to be solved. You are a soul to be respected. But the longer you keep trying to convince someone of your worth, the more you silence your own truth. You start to believe her silence is your fault. You think if you just say the right thing, send the perfect text, or show up at just the right emotional frequency, she'll finally pick you. But brother, here's the quiet heartbreak. If someone doesn't value you at your clearest, they won't love you at your most poetic. Love is not built on confusion. It's built on clarity, and clarity feels safe. It feels warm. It feels like home. If she makes you feel like you're constantly walking on emotional eggshells, then you are not in love. You are in survival mode. And no one heals in survival mode. You may look composed, but internally, you're burning with questions. Does she care? Why doesn't she reply? Is it me? But these are not questions of love. These are questions of emotional exile. Your worth is not a mystery to be deciphered. It's a light to be seen. And when you have to keep explaining that light to someone, it means they've already decided to keep their eyes closed. You don't need to argue your way into someone's heart. You don't need to overstay in someone's indifference. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew. Detachment is not about bitterness. It's about choosing peace over performance. The man who stops explaining is the man who starts healing. When you let go of the need to be understood by someone who doesn't care to listen, you make space for people who will. You reclaim your energy. You stop bleeding into conversations that go nowhere. And most beautifully, you begin to attract not confusion, but certainty. A woman who sees you won't need subtitles for your soul. So stop explaining, stop pleading, stop waiting, and instead start remembering. The man who knows his worth never begs to be noticed. He becomes so rooted in his truth that those who cannot meet him there fall away, not because he pushed them, but because they were never meant to stay. Number 6, grieve the fantasy and let her go as she really is. Sometimes the hardest part about emotionally disconnecting from a woman isn't the absence she leaves behind. It's the dream we built around her. It's not just her we miss. It's the version of her we created when we were lonely, hopeful, and full of quiet longing. We grieve the fantasy, the late-night texts that made us believe she cared deeply, The way she smiled when she needed us, the brief moments where she saw fragments of our soul and made us feel chosen, even if only temporarily. But here's the unfiltered truth. Fantasies don't love your back. Detaching from someone who doesn't see your value starts with mourning the version of her you wished she could be. Because chances are, she wasn't cruel. She was just distant. She wasn't toxic. She was emotionally unavailable. That vagueness, that inconsistency, became a blank canvas for your projections. You filled her silences with stories. You gave her distance the benefit of the doubt. You confused her breadcrumbs for affection. But what you were really loving was your own hope, and that's why it hurts so much. You weren't just losing her, you were losing the story you told yourself, that if you were just a little more patient, she'd come around, that if you proved yourself enough, she'd wake up and finally love you the way you love her. But the man who detaches must do the most courageous thing of all. He must let go, not of a woman, but of a version of love that never truly existed. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That heartbreak you're feeling right now, that ache in your chest when you realize she never saw you fully, that's not a dead end. That's the beginning of clarity. That is the gateway to self-respect. But only if you're brave enough to grieve the illusion and walk through the fog, alone, into the truth. She might not have been cruel, but she was careless with your heart. She didn't shatter it. She wore it like a temporary necklace, something that looked good until it didn't match her outfit anymore, and you tolerated that, not because you were weak, but because you were loyal, because you believed in her potential, even when she gave you little in return. But at some point, loyalty to someone who won't meet you halfway becomes betrayal to yourself. The detachment begins not when you block her, but when you stop waiting for her to finally choose you. When you stop checking your phone, hoping she finally gets it. When you stop rehearsing conversations in your head, trying to make sense of her mixed signals. Detachment begins when you accept her as she really is, not as the muse of your loneliness, but as a woman who either didn't have the capacity, the will, or the courage to love you properly. And that's okay. You don't need to hate her. You don't need to villain her. You just need to set her down. With tenderness, yes. With grief, of course, but also with strength. Because your healing doesn't come from getting closure from her. It comes from giving closure to yourself, from realizing that the love you were giving her so freely, it's yours to keep. It's sacred, and it's time to give it to someone who won't look away when you finally show your heart fully. So, grieve her, grieve the fantasy, cry if you need to, but when the tears are done, wipe your face, stand tall, and walk away. Not because you stopped loving, but because you started remembering what it feels like to love yourself more. Conclusion: letting go of a woman who doesn't see you is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your return. A return to self, to peace, to dignity. It's a hard truth to face, that someone you held in such high regard, someone whose opinion once shaped your self-worth, never truly looked into you the way you looked at her. But walking away isn't weakness, it's sacred strength. It's the moment you choose reality over illusion, the moment you stop chasing validation from a heart that wasn't open to yours, and in that quiet, painful moment, something beautiful begins to bloom. Clarity. Emotional detachment isn't cold. It's not bitterness. It's not shutting down. It's choosing to protect your soul from slow erosion. It's taking your love, your time, your presence, all the things you once gave so generously, and pulling them back with honor. It's reclaiming your emotional energy and deciding it will no longer be spent on someone who only saw your usefulness, but not your soul. You were never invisible. She simply lacked the eyes to see. And now your only task is not to make her see, but to heal the parts of you that kept begging to be noticed. That version of you, the one who waited, hoped, and tried so hard, deserves compassion. And the future version of you, the one who walks away with quiet strength, deserves to be born. So, as you move forward, remember this: your value is not up for debate. Your worth is not defined by how someone else responds to your heart. Let this detachment be your declaration that your love is sacred, and you will no longer give it to someone who doesn't rise to meet it. If this message touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, share it with a brother who needs it, and subscribe to this channel for more soul-deep content rooted in Stoicism, healing, and self-worth. You are not alone. This is your journey back to yourself.